All right, hello and welcome back for one more seed review. I do apologize, this is seed number 4 or 5 in a row, but I promise this is the last one for a little while. So this is the Gundam seed Freedom from the original Gundam seed series. It is not the Strike, it is the Freedom Gundam that Kira Yamato piloted towards the end of the series, and it is probably one of my favorite kits. So I do love the Strike itself, the Strike Freedom, or the Strike Gundam from the beginning of the series, but the Freedom is just awesome. It is basically plot armor in a Gundam, but it's still a really cool looking kit, and as you can tell by the box, its aesthetic is just awesome. So popping open the box, nice and easy, we've got all the bits and pieces here. Probably one of my favorite parts that stands out is one of the first runners has a stand on it, and anyone that's watched me before knows I love a kit that comes with a stand. So this is a 2016 kit, although some of the runners are from a little bit earlier. Like the stand kit, obviously it's a 2004 stand, and the runner underneath it is a 2016 runner. So we're looking pretty good for fairly new tech in this particular kit, which is really nice. It is coming up as the Master Grade version 2, which is always a good sign. So most of these are probably 2016 runners, which is nice. So as we're digging through, we're going down, getting further in. Still no sign of polycaps. I'm getting excited now. I haven't actually opened this box to take a look properly at it before now. All the way down, no polycaps. That is a really, really good sign in my opinion. I can't stand polycaps in a kit these days. I find them to be cheap and flimsy, and they loosen up very, very quickly, and I just don't enjoy putting them in. So having a kit without them is always a pleasure, and that does generally mean they're a little bit of an easier build as well in the meanwhile. So standard little pamphlet here, just an image on the back of what we're expecting it to look like, and it's going to be a pretty straightforward build from the looks of things. As always with the Freedom kits, the backpack is always a bit of a pain in the ass with the articulated wings, and these this waist joint with the hyper cannons on the waist there are always a little bit annoying, but otherwise the rest of it should be fairly straightforward overall for a Gundam build. So I am looking forward to getting this done. So let's jump into the time lapse, and I'll see you on the other side for my thoughts and opinions. See you soon. All right, hello and welcome back. I'm just going to move this back a little bit, get more of the kit in frame. Here we go. So this is the Master Grade Freedom Gundam, version 2 from 2016. So that is a moderately important distinction, I believe, especially with the Freedom Gundam, which seems to have like 3 or 4 different versions in each grade, aside from Perfect Grade, which I think there's only the one Freedom. Don't quote me on that one, but I'm pretty sure. Anyway, so this one here, he's wobbling around a lot because his backpack adapter is a bit weird. I'll get into that in a minute. I do really like this kit. He has a couple of strange little gimmicks in the elbows and the wings themselves obviously are quite strange. And then you've got the backpack, which is a pretty standard backpack, let's be honest. It's just a... pull this off pretty easily. So it's just this single clip into the back of the mobile suit, and you can tell how heavy this is because it keeps falling over when it's not attached to the Gundam itself. So these wings are super back heavy, which causes a bit of problems when trying to get this kit to stand on its own 2 feet. So it's possible. It is possible. It takes a bit of awkward maneuvering, but it's possible. So there he is. He's standing on his own 2 feet, which is nice. But the adapter up the back here is quite a strange little adapter. So it hooks underneath and onto the backpack, but it doesn't connect in. The backpack just sits in it. So it doesn't actually hold it there incredibly well. It just kind of sits in place and boom, kind of like that. So it's a bit of a weird little adapter. So it does mean that you can't do crazy dynamic range of poses. You can only do kind of straight up and down ones. You can move the torso a little bit, but you really need to emphasize through the arms and through the legs and its maneuvers through that way to figure out what kind of pose you want. So I'm kind of just, I've always preferred kind of just leaving them in these fairly generic poses of just kind of like feet down a little bit, legs spread, arms out, and he's just kind of hovering there or something like that. I've always been a bit of a fan of this kind of generic superhero flight pose kind of thing. So I tend to leave a lot of my model kits in something similar. And with this one, I'm not going to go through the effort of doing like a crazy dynamic pose and then having to change it every time I want to move it or put it in a slightly different display angle. So I'm just going to leave it like this. Probably in a couple of months' time I'll change my mind and I'll want to put it in something crazy dynamic and super expressive or something like that. But for now, let's just leave it like this, shall we? Now, speaking of that backpack adapter, I'll show you in here if I take this wing out, which is pretty easy. So these wings just sit there with a standard peg, but you can see under there how it's sitting in just kind of nice and easy like that without the weight of this other wing. It's not sitting in there quite as well as it normally does. So put that back in there, it will sit a bit straighter. Here we go, nice and easy. Put those wings, push those wings back a little bit. Looks kind of cool. These wings are super articulate, so they've got quite a range of motion in different parts. These cannons come up and over the shoulders, which are awesome, and they're just ridiculous. Oh, you can kind of make that out. All right, there we go. So these cannons are just stupid huge, stupid huge, and they're fantastic. But they don't do anything else. They just sit there. You can't put a beam effect in them or anything like that. They just sit there and look cool. And so you can get that kind of Jesus Kun pose coming through with all the weapons out and everything, from like the hip weapons and the over-the-shoulder ones, and there's beam rifle in hand and everything as well. So you can get all those weapons out, and it just looks like he's going to rain death down from above. But I prefer to just leave him in this kind of generic pose. As you can see, he's rocking a lot, just from me like wobbling the table a little bit when I adjust him, and he tends to wobble for a while afterwards. So he is not the most stable. If you got one of these action-based ones, you might find him a little bit more stable with the under, like the crotch adapter, but he doesn't have a 3mm peg or any area that you can adapt onto it. So it's a bit fiddly in that regard. Overall though, this kit is a high tier, unfortunately because of a couple of weaknesses like the backpack and things like that. I am only giving it a high tier. If it had a bit more front loading weight to try and counterbalance the just ridiculous amount of plastic on his back, or something, maybe a slightly better display system or something like that, that might have bumped it up a little bit further in my estimation. But as it is, he is just a high tier. Overall, super cool though. I really enjoyed the build. It took me about 5 hours. I took a little bit longer than I normally do with a high grade. I was taking my time and really enjoying it. And yeah, it was well worth the time and effort invested into it. So if you have been considering getting this particular kit, I do strongly recommend it. It is definitely up there with some of my favorite seed kits, which is saying a lot. It's basically up there with the Strike RM, which is high praise coming from me because that is a master tier kit. It's got a couple of little gimmicks that I'm not a big fan of, so it does lose a couple of points in that particular area, unfortunately. Overall though, really enjoyed it, and I would strongly recommend it for someone who's been building for a while, or even someone who's only recently gotten into it and all they've seen is like Seed or Iron-Blooded Orphans or something like that. This particular kit will definitely get them hooked on the hobby. Lots of fun. Really easy plastic to play with, no poly caps, which is a big bonus. And yeah, I really enjoyed this kit. So looking forward to seeing what else I can get my hands on in the coming weeks. Next week though is the high grade Hazel, and I am looking forward to building something that isn't Seed for the first time in about a month. So look forward to that, and I'll see you next week.